Well, hey everybody, I'm the Crockett Cooner, and this is the Crockett Coonhound Show, and you have made it to Fireside Chats with the old Cooner. Now, guys, it's December the 2nd, 2024, and I am out here doing a little talking tonight about deer season. That's right. For everybody that has followed us, you guys know that I have gotten my main man Dave out. We've done a little hunting, and some of our drone pilots have gone. One of those guys missed a good mature 8-point buck the other morning. Unfortunately, he was off a little bit in his sighting, but I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit today about the rut and about rattling and calling in deer. Now, all I can do is talk about myself and the techniques that I use and what I like to use. But guys, for those of you, much like myself, you've been in the hunting game for years. I have a lot of people that are preppers and homesteaders and things that now have large amounts of property. They're doing some hunting and things on them, and they're trying to provide a little meat for the old freezer. Throughout the years, we heard a bunch of information that wasn't necessarily false, but it wasn't the whole story, so to speak. I've been doing some research. I've listened to some folks talking about the rut and talking about deer vocalizations and things. I've written a little bit on it, that there were 12 main sounds that whitetail deer use, but they can combine them in about 400 different ways and tones and things to communicate danger, to communicate food, to assert dominance, all types of things. But that's something I kind of want to get into. Now, guys, I have got probably 40 years worth of experience with hunting. I was carried even from the time that I was a child on, and I definitely support the outdoors. I understand there's a lot of folks that don't share our view on that, and I apologize for that, but I'd like to recognize those people also and understand that they don't share our viewpoints on the outdoors. But back to the subject. Now, guys, I'm going to kind of show you something. Now, I'm an old school night and hill person. Picked this call up. I've had this call for 20 years. It's a doe bleat. And I also enjoyed Night and Hill's rattling bag. And I've, in times past, used some actual antlers or the reproduction plastic antlers and things. I'm going to get into that in a second. But, some of the old information, guys, about the rut was that, we all had to kind of wait until it got to be cold weather. Well, that's not exactly incorrect, but it's not the whole story. Scientists have done a lot of research on this. They have followed deer for 12, 13, 18 years. They've watched them, they've tracked them, they've seen their patterns and things, and they have found that, the rut doesn't always occur at the same place for everyone. So just as close as the county next to yours, it may not be occurring. But then again, in your particular area, it may. A lot of it is based on the food supply that the deer have. A lot of it is based on temperature. A lot of it is based on the amount of does that are in a herd of whitetail deer that the bucks have the ability to breed with and things. But now, as a hunter, just like a lot of you folks know, whitetail buck deer, especially mature, middle-aged, dominant buck deer that are, providing a lot of horns there, when it gets to be the rut, well, you could find those guys anywhere. They'll travel off of farms and out of mountains and everywhere else chasing the does around. Now, throughout my years, guys, I have made a video before and done a little typing on it on how some calls, even if they're old, still work, and that's one that I've got here. I love this old doe bleat from Night and Hill, and that doesn't mean that I'm against using new products, but I realized it years ago, if I blew on it about twice, if I gave it a good it seemed to produce results. There would always be a bunch of does coming in. And then, of course, in my particular area, because I've always did most of my hunting here in Middle Tennessee, but now I have been all over the U.S. doing it and hunting different species, raccoons and things. But I noticed that many times it would bring in a herd of does or 2 or 3 of them, and there might be a small buck with them, and I would wait. I had a gentleman tell me, I don't even recall now, guys, who it was, but he said, you know, watch, sometimes the dominant deer will actually push the smaller buck deer out into the field. You know, just give it another good 10, 15 minutes and see what happens. And I did that quite a few times, and it always seemed to be productive about half the time. You know, which kind of brings me to the part about buck deer and deer in general, you know, the whole herd in your particular area and what they're eating and things. Now, we know that there's all different types of, you know, nutrition and things that you can give them in food plots, and it builds up certain elements of their body and things to produce bigger deer, healthier racks, and all of those types of things. But myself, a lot of folks shy away from rattling deer. They believe that throughout the season of hunting that they become a bit skittish, and they do. You know, and part of the new study found that many times your larger white-tailed deer will move on around 11 to about 12 o'clock, about lunchtime, you know, that they seem to get out and move. And that's true. I've seen many folks, in my opinion, that hunt that had quite, you know, good luck on around lunch, even though they got there before daylight, you know, 5 o'clock that morning, and they got in the stand and they got set down and they tried their best, you know, the full regalia, guys. They had on the scent blocker, they had on the camouflage, they've let some smaller deer walk and things, you know, kind of actually doing some, I guess you would say, trophy hunting, looking for a particular deer. But when it comes to rattling, guys, I am a fan. Now, this particular old rattling bag, I've had it for about 20 years too, and it seems to work pretty good. But I'll tell you something, that's kind of part of what I wanted to add to this particular video. I tried a technique years ago, I just currently don't have any of them, is the old rattling horns. And you can use, you know, horns from hunts before and things. But one technique that I enjoy a whole lot, guys, a lot of people disagree with me on this one, but I like to find me a good rope, like a thin piece of paracord that's possibly green. You know, it blends in well to the surroundings. And what I like to do is I like to take my horns, tie a string in between them. So, you know, a good length of string, about 8 inches, to where the horns will come together. And then in the middle of that string, tie another rope, run it up to the top of my tree stand and tie it on to the top part of the tree stand and reach over and grab my rope, pull it up and down and drop it on the ground. Not only do you get the sound of the rattling, you also get leaves and things being stepped on, and it adds a really great realistic effect. Now, I don't know if that works for everybody. I do believe in times past, you know, if you were there just looking for any deer, you know, you just wasn't going to rattle up the big boy, just anything that came out, you know, you're a big meat hunter, you know, sometimes rattling seemed to scare away some of the smaller deer. It seemed to kind of make some of the does run and those types of things. Not that they wouldn't just come in to look, but, you know, much like with my old bleat here, you know, there was really no instructions years ago on the packs, guys, that said blow it 4 times, blow it 5 times. And I actually had heard with my own ears a couple of does, and I was listening to them. I was there in a climbing stand, and they'd walked under me. And of course, years ago, I was waiting on the big guy to walk out. And, you know, I noticed their vocalizations, the sounds they were making. And I thought, you know, I'm going to try to recreate that, you know, what I'm hearing them do. And a lot of scientists had done a lot of studies, and apparently, now don't hold me to this one, guys, I was saying that it's safe to come out into the field. That's what the message was, apparently, the best I can gather, guys. I was relaying to the deer. And I'm sorry guys, it always seemed to work for me in my particular area. Now, a lot of folks, when it comes to deer hunting, they have a lot of different methods and things that they use, those types of deal. I've noticed over time, guys, I've timed it. It seems that the first of the season there in my particular area, we usually have good cold weather set in. Beginning of November, you'll start having a few good cold days there about the time that the later parts of hunting season opens in Tennessee. And I've kept up with it, guys. It seemed that the deer moved early in the morning, either right before daylight or right at daylight, and then it's almost as if you could flip a switch, and between the hours of about 7 to about 8 you wouldn't see anything, and then on around about 9 or so for about 45 minutes there they would move. But I've noticed as the season went on, guys, it appeared that the deer would in fact move, but that whole process would come later in the day. And I've read where folks say, they have to bed down ever so often and those types of things, and that many times buck deer will put the wind to their back and put a ledge behind them. That way, if a smell passes across, they can keep a view on the things that are downwind from them, but also be able to use their sense of smell to find out what's behind them. Now, as luck would have it, guys, I had seen it years ago. They were talking about the vision of the whitetail deer and things, and how, basically their eyes or their pupils are not like a human being's, that they have a slot in their pupil. And they basically see not colors the way we do. For a lot of folks that don't know that, they see in black and white, similar black and white, like a darker tone. But whenever they're looking, their field of vision on both sides when they're standing up is much wider than ours. It's much more acute than ours. I mean, let's face it, we're in their home, they live in the woods. And when they drop their head to eat, their field of vision, their eyes actually turn and come up. And that way they still get a full range of vision while using their nose and their taste buds in order to find something to eat, which makes perfect sense why years ago in bow season I had a deer basically look away from me, and I pulled back, and when I let go she was still looking away, and she did this funny little number where she spread her legs and ducked, and the arrow went over her back. And I yet for years to try to figure out how that deer knew that. There's no way she could have heard that. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about rattling. Now, I do believe it's possible, guys, to rattle too much, to call too much. I think that's a thing. I try to space mine out ever so often, but if I notice a deer, it depends on the terrain and things that I'm hunting in. If I notice a good big buck deer, from a distance, I know he can hear me, but he can't see me well. Many times if I'm using a grunt tube of some sort, I don't have it out here with me right now, but if I'm using a grunt tube, many times I'll start in with a good solid just where I'm kind of imitating another buck deer really looking for a fight. And I know that there's a bunch of you guys that have done other little techniques. Tinks, they make some great products as far as doe urine and those types of things, but the old Cooner here and a few of my hunting friends, we would use an empty bottle and get it right at the source, take it from one deer, go to a different area, find a scrape, put it on it. Little side note, guys, I did that one time, put a digital camera right above the scrape, and I got one of those old pictures, kind of like the old movie Jaws, where you can see its eye, except I saw part of its head and a mighty big antler, as to where he tore hard enough of those horns and was so irritated and upset that he tore my digital camera off the tree and pretty well tore it up. So just a tip from the old Cooner here, make sure you get your camera back there enough and not right over there if you do something like that, because many times, for our mature buck deer, it kind of sends them into orbit and they'd start rubbing their heads on everything that's there. So with that being said, guys, just a few little tips and techniques here on the Fireside Chat from the old Cooner on how I personally approach a little rattling and calling techniques when it comes to whitetail deer. So with that being said, I say it all the time, guys, definitely stay safe on the water, stay safe in the woods, and definitely stay tuned here at the Crockett Coonhound Show, and myself and Scooter will have you another video dropping shortly. You guys have a great day.